Hello, my friends. John LaRuffa here with another Straight Up Solo. In this episode, we're going to take a look at Weather Machine. This is one heavy storm. So I'm going to show you what this game is like when you play it solo. I'm going to play it through a couple of turns. This is more of a first impression because I feel like this game is going to take a lot of subsequent plays to really get comfortable with it, but I feel comfortable enough that I can give you my impressions of it, and then you can kind of see how it plays, and then you can decide, is this something that you're interested in buying from a solo perspective, or is this not something for you? So let's go ahead and get started. And as usual, folks, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and if you have, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Okay, taking a deep breath, this game has the usual Lacerda heaviness, and I would say it's probably one of the heavier ones that I've played that he has done, but it's not so much the steps. The steps aren't too bad. What I find difficult to understand is the interlink between everything, and I would say that will improve with plays, so I'm not too upset about it by any means, but I read the rules front to back, and I said to myself, I have no idea how this game is really supposed to be played. I had to watch a video of Paul Grogan playing with some other people to get a feel for the actual gameplay because I just couldn't get there from the rules. So that's tough, and I mean, some people might not want to do that. Some people maybe are more adept than I am, so they won't have to do that, but I found it was necessary because even though I read the theme and I understand what they were going for, the idea of like, okay, but how does all this interact in practical terms? How does it really happen? Escaped me, really. So I had to watch about an hour and a half worth of the video to see everything demonstrated. Now, I will say this. I do find that the iconography is actually not too difficult to understand in this game. For the most part, things seem to make sense because there's the way that they're used is represented both on the board and it matches the components. So that's at least a little bit easier. However, you can see, I mean, look at this thing, right? This is, and I'm glad they did it, but this is the player board for the solo player. I mean, you know, I'm pretty sure that before they could speak, you know, Egyptian, they had to find this in the desert. So it takes some learning. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but at least I think that they did their best to try to make it so that you could play the game once you learn the language here without having to do too many rule lookups because it is represented what you're supposed to do in the steps, okay? Now, what the game is all about is that, you know, thematically speaking, this scientist, Latif, which is Vital, spelled backwards, made this weather machine, screwed up all the weather. And so he's trying to figure out where he went wrong and make improvements on that so that he can fix the weather. But as he researches that stuff, the weather keeps getting worse and worse. So you've got to, basically what you have is you've got three sections in this board, really four. This bottom section down here, right here, is the supply warehouse section. So this is where you get fuels, or different chemicals, pardon me. The chemicals are used to pay for different things. Specifically, they're used to pay for actions in here and to pay for some of the actions in here. You go here in this space to get different lab tiles that expand your lab. They don't necessarily upgrade your lab, they really expand it. And you put them over here on your board, and they can hold chemicals when they come together and the colors match. They can hold gears like you see here, and they can hold your robots, okay? You start the game with a wild card to hold any chemical, any gear, and any robot. And as you expand, you then, and you have to expand within this 3 by whatever space, you can put more stuff in there, okay? Excuse me. This is your lab, and on your lab, what you have here is you have your production, your assembly lines that can churn out bots. And when you bring a bot out, it's basically used to take your 3 actions in these main areas. You kind of need the bots to do that, regardless of what you're really doing. Now, there's some actions that don't require a bot. I'm being a little misleading, but they're used, as you can see here, to take this first part of this action over here, you place a bot. Over here, this first part, you place a bot. Over here, this first part, you place a bot. The second actions are a little bit different, and we'll talk about those in a second. So the bots all act the same, but as you pull them off your supply or your assembly line, when income happens, you will get different bonuses of income when that phase actually happens. And how does income happen? Well, I'll tell you about that later. The other thing you have on here is your different currencies, and I'll say currencies because that they call them oh, for pity's sake, now I'm blanking. Funding tokens or allotments or oh, for pity's subsidies. Thanks, for pity's sake, subsidies. So you have different subsidies that you can take. Actually, no, that's not even true. These are your subsidy tokens. These are other. It'll come to me in a second. Anyway, the deal is you have all these different currencies you're managing, and the currencies let you take actions in each of the spaces. So your logistics supply currency helps you take actions down here. Your government currency helps you take actions in this area. Your lab currency helps you do here. The research and development helps you do here. And then the science one lets you basically, that's like a wild. You can use it wherever you want. You can also do a couple of different things. If you don't have the right currencies, you can spend 3 for 1 of anything as a wild, and it's not one, it could be a multiple of those things. You can always spend 2 of any one thing to swap a gear from one color to another, and 2 of any one of these currencies to swap a chemical for any one for another. And that keeps the frustration down. It still rewards you for good planning, but you at least have some leverage you can pull if, oh crap, somebody took my spot, or in this case, the solo bot took my spot. And now I don't have any more of those. And so without those, I can't do what I want. And that would be extremely frustrating without those abilities. So I do think it's great that they're vouchers. There we go, vouchers. That is good that they have that built in. Otherwise, this game would be maddening, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody because it would just be like your plans would be constantly destroyed all the time. But no, that's not the case. I'm not saying that. Thank goodness they put it in there. Okay. So the other thing, so we've talked about these areas right here. This one down here where you get your chemicals, you get your lab. You can also affect turn order, and you can pay for more bots to come out. When the bots come out, they have to have a space. Up here, this is where you're doing government work, and they'll reward you in subsidies, and you're trying to help the government basically build their own machine to fix the problems over here. And you do that in 2 different ways, but what it comes down to is one of those ways, you activate one of these subsidy tiles and immediately get a payout for the thing that's in the top and the thing that's on the side of whatever row and column it intersects with, okay? And the other thing is where you would move up on the funding track, you'd place one of your robots in one of these spaces, and one of those spaces then would allow you to pick up a subsidy tile, and then you'd have to pay the cost in gears. So for instance, if I want to go here, I would have to put a robot down, take my white gear and put it someplace and then pick that subsidy up, and I can use that subsidy at the beginning of my turn. And that's basically what all this says. Plus, I would get one of these research achievements here, and as you start to get research tokens, that allows you to start to be able to build up enough smarts to actually publish something on the topic, which then would allow you to start to fix the situation by doing a prototype. So there is a huge amount of interlinking between these different things that you have to know. So that's what that space is. This space right here is where you do your research in the lab. So what you're going to be doing in this case is you're going to be paying those chemicals to put down your bot to help a machine run, okay? And then when the machine runs, it will give you points. You'll also be able to spend some science. Well, you have to spend the science to get the points. You get 2 points or whatever the point value is here for each bot that you have in play. You can, if you want, also, depending on how it goes, you can do some things to pay gears instead of these other things happening to allow for you to score versus the other one. And some of the particulars, we have to go through the procedure to actually see, how that goes. Because it is, a little bit particular about how you specifically will do that part when you're resolving these areas. But when the machine runs, it runs if this guy is on there, and this guy is the assistant to Latif. He's the bot that says, okay, is this going to run? It's going to run if everything is in good shape, that it has bots there, and then that pays out, and there's other things that happen. When this runs, bad weather gets worse, okay? So in this case, if this rain weather would run, this machine right here, which corresponds to rain, and it would at the end of this round, this is going to allow us to score a bunch of points, get some gears, and maybe an investment token, but then the rain weather is going to get worse. Now that's where you come over here to this R&D slide, or this R&D place. The R&D is where you are going to take one of two actions. The first thing you can do is conduct research and development into these areas to start prepping for your ability to fix the weather. The second thing you can do is, after you have published a paper in a specific weather, and maybe it's not you, maybe it's somebody else, but once it's been unlocked, then you can try to build a prototype by following some rules to fix the weather. And if you fix the weather, then basically a couple things happen. Number one, you score some points. You also get some of these rewards. You might unwind certain things from happening, and you then get these Nobel prizes, or not the Nobel Prize, these prize tokens, which could eventually lead to the Nobel Prize. And those you can use at any time to fill in more of your research and basically get your engine going to try to deal with all this stuff. Is it complicated? You bet it is. I'm not going to lie and say it isn't. It is something that you're going to have to play through and watch and go from turn to turn with the rule book out. Thank goodness there's a couple things. Number one, I'll say this. They did a pretty good job with this rule book for the solo bot, okay? And I will say, I'm not sure how they could have done it any shorter. I appreciate that they spelled out exactly what to do, and for the most part, I haven't hit any real fringe cases that didn't make sense. Some things I had to understand, like for instance, I'll be very clear, the main actions here are these three up there. This warehouse is not considered a main action. I had a hard time trying to figure that out from the rule book, but it is true, at least from what I could tell on Board Game Geek. So when he might interact depending on the placing of the scientist of the main action, that doesn't count for this warehouse space. Little things like that, but it's not very many of those, thank goodness. Now, the other thing that's helpful is that this book walks you through the turns, but once you've been walked through them enough, you will understand how to read this iconography soup, okay? Now, the way the bot works is the bot is controlled by this deck of cards, and you will see what the bot is going to do in the upcoming turn. You can actually even spend some cards out of this deck, if you don't like what he's about to do, to choose something different. But if this deck runs out and the game has not ended yet in one of the two other ways for scoring, you immediately lose. So you got to be careful that you don't want to keep cycling through that. The other way that you can immediately lose is if two of these weathers get to the level 3, which is where really bad things happen, then I think you automatically lose also when two of them get to level 3. And that is represented over here. Yes, 2 or more get to level 3, you immediately lose. You immediately win the game if you are satisfying 4 currently active goals here, plus you are beating the score that Latif puts out as the minimum score, plus you have 5 or more, you're at level 5 or more on 2 or more of those funding tracks. If you're doing all that, you immediately win. If you don't have that going on, then you get to the end of the game by the same rules that the normal game ends, which is basically, and I have to just, I'll go through it. There's 3 conditions. Number 1, a player takes the Nobel Prize. So if you get the Nobel Prize, and there's some conditions around that, that'll get you 5 points, but the game will end. Number 2, the last experiment tile is placed in the display. So once you've churned through all these, the last one goes in, their game will end. It'll end after that 1 turn. You know, the usual, like, get 1 more turn kind of thing. And then number 3, the government machine is completed. So all these bot spaces down here are full. And number 4, all research spaces in R&D are occupied, which are all these. So if you do all that, the game will then end. And then you'll score. So with all that being said, as far as an overview, let's go ahead and just show you a couple of turns so you can feel kind of the play. Now, what I didn't go through, but you'll see, is how these scientists move around to actually do, you know, what you want to do. So I'll play a round or maybe two and see. We'll see. Okay, so we start with turn order. It is the bot's turn. So we see here that his, actually I did this last time, I didn't replace the card. So we see here that his pink bot will go to the R&D spot, and it wants to go to the left spot first. If that one's full, it would go to the right spot. If that one's full, it would go to the center. So it's going to go to, we're over here, moves over here, goes to the left spot. The second step would be if anything was over here, like in these two, and it had to go into these spots, if there was other occupied spots, it would boost the score needed to defeat it up. And actually, this is off a little bit because my cats knocked into it earlier and dumped it down. So now we're back to where it needs to be. So now it'll say, okay, in this action, you're going to go ahead and do the action proper. By the way, if Latif is there, then you move Latif and you do some other things, which we would get into if that happens. Okay, but he's not there, so it doesn't matter. But what ends up going on usually is if Latif is actually in that spot, then you end up moving him to the next spot to the right. Plus, if it's a human player, you would then go ahead and get some more bonuses, which they don't get here. The bots don't, but I would show you that if that happens. And then also, if Latif moves to this spot or this spot, you would discard a whatever you call these things, the research tokens. There we go. Which they don't look like research tokens at all. They look like books, but these research tokens, you would discard that based on where the assistant really is at that moment. Okay, but none of that happens. So he goes here and he's on the and spot. So when he goes here on the and spot, you follow all these steps from 1 to 5. Now, that's where this little book comes in handy because I'm still not completely up to snuff on how to do it well. So we're just going to read this thing. So it says, move one of the saboteur's bots from the hideout to a research space based on the weather priority and the indicator of the previous report. The weather determines which branch the bot is placed on. In the priority indicator determines whether the topmost or bottom would happen, and if there's no space, you go to the next branch, etc. The saboteurs don't pay anything; they just do it. So that's a little bit truncated. All right. So when they talk about the previous weather report, they're talking about this one right here. It says go to the winter weather report and go to the highest space. So we look over here. Here's the winter weather report, or sorry, the winter weather. It's going to put the bot on the highest space. It does not pay anything to do that. So that's step 1. Step 2, wait a minute, it might pay something. Step 2, if the saboteurs, which is what the bots are called, have a chemical of the type depicted on the left chosen space, move it from their hideout to that space. If they do this, move a research token from the chosen branch to their hideout. If there are no more research tokens in the situation, then raise the target value by 5 and remove a lock from the corresponding space. So, number 1, he does have a blue. So he's going to put the blue, all right, back into the depot over here. And he's going to then take this other winter space token. So what you're trying to do, which I didn't really describe yet here for the bot, is when the bot gets a set, it goes through this thing called wreaking havoc. Well, it doesn't have a set of any of these things yet. As you can see, I have 2 of each. It would have a set if any of these are unlocked. They're not unlocked yet. But basically, that's what you do for that spot. Now, step number 4 is, let's see. So then number 4 says, so 3 says, select which space of which branch to interact with. So the saboteurs ignore branches that are full, if they have no chemicals matching the available spaces, anything like that. So now it's going to do this again, and it's going to, because we placed in the first spot, it did that. Now it's going to do it again in this one, and it's going to see where it can spend this white. Okay, so branches that are full, there's none there that are full. Branches where saboteur has no chemicals. Like I said, it's going to ignore this branch, and that branch. So it's only these two now. Well, out of the remaining branches, the saboteurs choose a branch which gains them a research token that helps them with the most complete set. So that would be this one right here, because they wouldn't do it. So we've got now our spot. And there, if the saboteur is unable to choose the branch, nope, they are. So move one of the saboteur's bots from their hideout to the top or bottommost based on this thing over here. So we move it to the topmost. But we can't do that because we can't pay... let's see, that they have a matching chemical for. So we actually have to go down here because they don't have a matching chemical for any of that. So they're going to pay the white one now. All right, they don't have to pay any extras for the bottom spaces, even though you and I, well, I do. Then when you've paid that, the bots do not pay. Okay, now I'll move a research token from the chosen branch to their hideout. If there's no more, you do the 5 and you unlock. Okay, well, here we go. Now, we just did this first situation here where all 3 of these are now for the sun, so it can wreak havoc. Okay, so now what happens is it goes, so we've completed the card in full, and it says after you've done this, then what you do is you look and see, can I wreak havoc? Well, I got 3 of 1, so yes, I can wreak havoc, and I'm going to do it. So let's go and we'll follow the steps on wreaking havoc. As you can see, there's a lot of steps, okay? There's no doubt about it. It's a VTEL game, right? So, in the Wreak Havoc, it says, if they have a set of research tokens and the citation space for which the weather is still locked, perform the following steps. Remove that set of tokens from the game. So we're going to remove the set of tokens from the game. All right? It's out of here. All right, then... take the topmost extreme weather tile from the stack matching the type of the weather and place it on the corresponding R&D stack, covering any tile already there. Any breakthrough markers on the existing tile are returned to the box. Any government research markers are returned to the government area. So we are going to then take, this is the sun now. We're going to find the sun, phase 2. We're going to put it right there. So now it is added, and it's added to the weather. Okay? Discard the top card of the security port deck if able. So now I have to basically discard this card, and that just quickens the game to end. Remove the game lock from the lock token space corresponding to the citation space. So that was sun. Now sun is unlocked. Okay. If they have a set of research tokens in the citation space for the type of weather is unlocked, move that set of tokens from the game and follow the other options where you basically raise the target value by 5, or you can discard another situation. So we just did that. We wreaked havoc, and now we are basically done with his turn. Phew! So there is a ton going on, as you can tell, right? And with the bot doesn't do exactly what's printed on here. So you have to follow what's printed on here. His whole goal is to sabotage you. So he's not playing, he's playing very similarly to where a two-player player would block you and do other things, but he's trying to affect the ruin of your game by ruining the weather and discrediting you and all sorts of other things. So that was what his turn looked like there. Now, we go ahead and we discard this card and we draw a new one. Okay? So, there's a lot going on there. Actually, this card goes under here just because the discard happens before you do the Wreak Havoc step. Now it comes to me. Well, geez, after all that, I can't even think about what I want to do. No, not really, but sometimes it's overwhelming. So here's the rules about moving your guy. Number 1, you can't stay in the same spot. So you have to move him to a different spot before you take the action, okay? Number 2, the more people to your left, the more vouchers you're going to get. So that helps you out. Number 3, if the fact that Latif is here will actually give you some wild science vouchers, which are good. So there's a lot of things that kind of nudge me going into this direction. If I could do something in that direction, that would be helpful. And so what I do know already is that this machine is going to activate because all these spots are good, and I definitely want to be able to spend some of my science to get the 5 points and get some gear. So that's going to happen. So I don't necessarily need to go there. I also don't have, so if I went there, that would be moving things along a little further. But the issue is I have no chemicals, right? So I can't even play a spot right there. That doesn't do me any good. So yeah, we're definitely not going there. Now the question is, what could I get if I went over there? Because I do have a bot and I do have at least this kind of gear, and that can help me with this situation right here. But I don't have another chemical of that type. So all things are pointing me in the fact that I probably need to go get some chemicals. And that's probably the easiest of all the actions, to be frank. So when I go down here, I get one free one of any kind. So I'm going to take a free science, okay? And then I'm going to get some of these chemicals I've been talking about. So I know that I need, with this white one, this white gear, I'm going to need a white chemical. So I'm going to do that. That's going to cost me a single voucher from my supply area. And I can put that right there because that was white. I could also decide to change the turn order if I wanted. I could decide to get more bots if I wanted. And I could also build up my lab a little bit more for more storage space. And one of the things I didn't show because I haven't done it yet in this game is this action, where you actually will research things. And when you research and publish, I've kind of talked a little bit about that. You sort of saw a mock version of what just happened there. But when you create a prototype, you have to use machine parts and such that are coming from this area in your lab, and there's a little more to it in that regard. But anyway, we're not going to focus on that. I do want to get some more chemicals. So I said I needed a white chemical there. What other chemicals? I mean, I could use anything pretty much over here. I'm going to think that chances are, since there's a wind blowing one over here, that it's a good chance that somebody is going to activate this other one. So maybe I take a risk and I get a blue chemical. So I'm going to spend another supply token voucher for the blue chemical. All right. Oh, and what I could have done at the beginning of my turn, which I forgot, was to do this research action without spending the chemical, which I actually do want to do. So I have to, unfortunately, back up a little bit of this. But that was what I was planning to do in the first place. So before you start your turn, you can spend one of these. This research action here says I can take the action in the research area, but I don't have to spend the chemical, which is exactly what I wanted to do. So in that regard, I will do that, and I will pretend like I did that at first. I'm going to put this thing right here. I don't have to spend the white chemical. But what I do get to do is I get to get so basically what that is that's doing this action here. So I do have to spend the one research to do it. I bump up on my research finance track, or funding track, pardon me. I put down the thing, but I do not have to pay. Then, number 4, I don't remember what that says, so let me look that up. So number 4 is, I think I get the gear that's shown there, but it could be I have to pay the gear that's shown there. So I'm not quite perfect in the language yet, as you can tell. Okay, so gain the benefits depicted on the space where you just placed your bot. So then take a research token from below the column, placing it on the top left. Okay. So where does the gear come in? I think the gear comes in later. That's probably what that is. Yeah, the gear comes in later. That's right. So I go here, I take this. This is actually going to be a supply token because it says go up on whatever one you want. So yay. And then I get to take this research token, which is in the wind, which I need. So I'm going to put it there because I'm going to be able to place it there in my turn. Okay, so I think I did that right because, yeah, it says take this spot. See, that's a little bit misleading, but it does show that. Okay, yeah, all right. So that's the reason going there, and then that'll help with these to unwind some of this bad weather. Phew! Now, back to what I was really doing here, back in this spot. Now that I'm out of bots, I know I'm going to need some more. So I might as well spend 2 of my supply vouchers to get this one right here. So I will do the following. Actually, I'm on a research too. So why don't I spend 1 supply voucher? I take this, I put the bot here, and I immediately, because of this icon, get a research and development voucher. Now, I have a bunch of lab vouchers here, which I could spend 3 of those because I don't have a big use for them, and get 1 of something else and then use one of these to pull this guy. That's what I'm going to do. Watch this. So I'm going to spend 3 of these. 1, 2, 3 as any one. I'm going to spend this other one. I'm going to pick this guy up now, put him over here, and that gets me one of these back. So that's at least a little better use of my time. Now I can't get down to here until I've got at least 6 bots out of here, and I can't get over here until I at least have 9. So you basically have to build all these first, then build all those, then do those. Or if you down here, if you have 5 of these research tokens or more, you can get into this. And if you have 8 of these research tokens or more, you can get into that. Phew. All right. So I am done with the supply action. I've completed what I wanted to do there. And so that should be the end of my turn, except I have to put this research token in a column that matches the color and also in a column that matches what's there. So I could not do something like that, but I could do something like this, which I will, because I want to be able to publish a wind thing or wind paper. Now there's no special thing going on here because this is empty, so I just put it there and that's it. Then my turn is done. Now, you say, well, how the heck do you remember all that? Well, this is step number 1. This is step number 2, moving your guys. This is step number 3, taking the action. This is step number 4 with that. So there are some helpful hints. They did a good job on trying to build in as much as they could on his board to help players. And I do appreciate that tremendously. But it's still a lot to take in, as you can tell. Okay, so the round is done. He did his move. I did my move. Now we come to slot B here. B says, does this experiment run or not? Does the machine run or not? And yes, it's going to run. It runs because I have the Lativ assistant over here. I have a rain experiment in the queue, and all the bots are in place. So let's go through the steps then. The first thing that happens is if I pay the science vouchers 1 or 2, I would go ahead and I would get the points here. But there's a couple other things. Number 1, in the running the machine here, so if it runs, so what I do is basically I return the bots to the workshop. I may pay science vouchers to gain the points and then take the advantage, and then I take one of the research tiles if I do that. If not, I gain a science voucher if it's exhausted. Once all players have done this step, return Lativ's bots and then add a new extreme weather. So basically that's what I'm going to do. But the saboteurs have some special things that I just have to look up beforehand. And it basically says running experiments. So when an experiment runs, both you and the saboteurs resolve the steps in turn order as normal. You gain the usual rewards if contributed. For each of the saboteurs bots in the active branch, return that bot to the hideout and raise the target value by the CP depicted on the experimental tile. The saboteurs do not pay science vouchers and ignores all other rewards. They also take a research token from the branch if it's still available when they are performing the steps. Only once, even if they have more than 1 bot. If none are available, they receive nothing. After the experiment runs, place a new extreme weather tile as usual. Now, in the 2-player, also, if we didn't both take all these, which we will, when you run the experiment, then it actually, I think one of those gets discarded as well. And luckily, and I really appreciate this, in the rule book, they put the couple of 2-player things right here. So it does say, when the experiment runs, after all the players have performed their steps, if there is one of Lativ's bots on the branch, remove it 1 game research token from below the active branch if available. So like I said, lots to remember. So here we go. He is going to get the 5 points. All right, so we're going to move him up 5. And remember, this isn't his score. This is like my score threshold to win. So he comes back. He takes a rain research token. I am going to pay, right here, the 1 science to get the 5 points. So I'm going to get some more points here, finally. And I get this research token as well. Plus, I also get to choose 2 gears or an investment tile. Now, as much as I'd like to get the gears, because I would, because they're helpful, I'm going to get the gears. All right, because I was going to get the investment tile because that's the only way you can get these guys into this spot. Oh boy, that's a tough call. Because you need these to help you win the game, the heck with it. I'm going to not get the gears. I'm going to get one of these investment tiles and I'm going to plug it in right here. And we're going to potentially use that to gas those up later. Okay, so then my bot comes back. If I don't have a place to put him, I have to put him back over there, which means I have to activate him again to pay some supply. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes, for instance, this one right here unlocks a gear. You could game the system a little bit, put him back, pull him off, get a gear. So that's kind of cool. All right, this is done. This now gets discarded from the game. We add more bad rainy weather, all right, which is this one, not the threes, the twos. This is getting worse. This slides over. We have more rainy weather coming out, and my assistant, or Latif's assistant, moves over. So that is step B. Now, if Latif happened to be in this area, and the only way he moves is when you move into his spot, so it takes him a while to get there. If that was to happen, then in phase C, you would then get your income. And the way you get your income is you get the rewards on all of the spaces that you've uncovered on those conveyors. So I think I've shown you at least a little bit about how this game works, because this video is getting long. I'm going to probably pull the plug on it by now. But you at least saw how these machines work. You saw some of this. You saw his actions. And you see how much of an investment this really is to learn. There is no way that you're going to just breeze through this game. You are going to have to decide to sit down and give it all you got to see if you can master this weather machine. So anyway, let me go ahead and tell you what I think of it. So that was Weather Machine from a solo perspective. I don't feel like I have to say too much, because I think after you watch that, you get an understanding of exactly what kind of commitment you're dealing with. If you love chunky games, if you like Vital Lacerda games, this one has it in spades. It's got all of the usual trappings of his stuff. It's got the artwork from Ian O'Toole, which makes it look great. It's got the multi-steps, the procedural gameplay, the interlocking mechanisms that aren't necessarily easy to tell, but do work and do tell a story. It's got the multitude of if this then that's kinds of things. The finance tracks are there to add more complexity. I mean, this is a heavy game. As far as I'm concerned, 5 out of 5 on heaviness. It's not impossible, but it is definitely probably in the top 5% of the heavy games that I have in my collection. Similar to other games like his, right? It's very much in the same heaviness of On Mars. I'd say it's heavier than Kanban EV. It's really at the level of Lisboa, which I still have. Notice I was pointing to these things. This is definitely at the level of Lisboa, I think, in complexity. So what that means is that you have to be ready for something like this. This is not something, it's first of all, it costs a fortune, all right? It's expensive, and it is going to take a lot of time. So it took me about an hour and a half or so to read through the rules, but then it took me another hour and a half to watch that playthrough, and it didn't even give me, I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched 2/3 of it because I felt like I had enough understanding that I could try. And then going through it and actually learning it, these turns are taking a long time, as you could tell, because I still have to do all of that reading and that understanding to just see what's going on. Now, a couple of things here that are very big pluses. Number one, the bot is great. You definitely feel like you've got the David Turtsey finesse in this bot. It's great from the standpoint is that it feels like you're playing against another person. Even though I've never played against another person, you can extrapolate and see that. It blocks your spaces. It manipulates the board. It provides tension because it's wrecking the weather, and you better deal with that or else. I like that tension like you get in Kanban EV. If you can't get ahead of the score track, if you are below it before the end of a certain round, then you're doomed, you lose. I love that. I really do. I think that makes for these two games, these are my two that I think are honestly the best. So I do like this game. I do like the feel of playing it. I love the complexity, even though I'm sweating over here. There's something satisfying about playing a Lacerda game when you feel like you can get ahead of it. Now, I don't know how I'm going to do, right? I'm sure it's going to take me a while to be better than the bot and start to win this game. But I still think this is satisfying. It's like learning a higher level math. Like once you finally understand something in calculus and you can do those problems, it's like, haha, all right, that's satisfying. I know that concept now. I can do that stuff. Before it was just so opaque, and now I see it. And now that I want to do this, I've got some strategy and I can see how it goes, and there's a lot to contemplate. That's the satisfaction in these. But if you don't want that, stay the heck away. You do not want to dabble. This would be not the first game I'd start with if I was going to try a Lacerda. I'd still start with Kanban EV, which is still a heavy one. But this is a big lift. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have to invest a lot of time and energy into learning it. But I do think there's a payoff here for those of us who appreciate his type of games. If you don't like his type of games, this one is not going to change your mind whatsoever. It is very much a game in his genre. And I do appreciate the player aids. Thank you. I do appreciate the effort for the icons to teach or to remind you of what to do. If you didn't have that, if there was no icons, or if they were really, really cryptic, as I've complained about some icons in some recent games I've gone through, that would really be difficult. Luckily, these icons happen to match all the components, spot for spot, and the arrows and such flow, and they use equal signs and plus signs and ands and such, so you can actually kind of read them and interpret what they're saying, and that's really helpful. So I've already picked up on, I'd say, a lot of the game where I don't have to follow those things, but because I haven't taken a lot of those actions in the R&D area, because that seems to happen, it's harder to get to those. I still want to follow it through the process, so that takes time. Besides that, I think that the priorities for the bot of what it does is pretty self-explanatory. There's not a ton of things like if this, then that. Even though I read all those conditions, it's pretty obvious what he's going to do. So I shouldn't say obvious because I don't want to make anything sound obvious here, but it flows naturally once you realize he's going to buy the cheapest thing, he's going to buy the easiest thing, he's going to buy the most beneficial thing. That's what he's going to do almost every time, right? To block you, to get in his position and to score. He's going to try to do the best he can to get those 3 tiles, those research tokens. So I think it's enjoyable. If you like this kind of game, I think you'll like this one a lot. I think it's a great design. It's a pleasure to look at. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. It doesn't feel like the bot is cheating. It feels like a tertsy design, which is good too. But if you don't want the heavy lift, stay away. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Whatever you play in the future, I hope you have a fantastic time doing it. Take it easy now.